States live.
Perfect.
Warning, if you're faint of heart or easily offended, this show is not for you.
I don't give a damn about what you saying, bitch, you in the way. Closed case, my nigga beat the charge just like yesterday. In your face, I'ma go hard and make sure you see the cake. Keep the pace, ain't no one fucking with me, this not a race. Doing the shit that I want, I'm never gonna stop, I'm never gonna give in. Making my way to the top, I told you to ride, I told you to get in. Now you can't eat out my pot, it's filled to the top, and I'm about to dig in. You say I was doing you wrong.
All right, we're live. Everything went well that time. We didn't repeat anything. Like everything went smooth. I'm going to get the hang of it. All right, people, welcome to the show this evening. Got Hans Berquist, my co-host, and we have Karl Basa with us, also a bully breeder and does a lot of reproduction work. So we thought he would be an excellent guest to bring on to talk a little bit about reproduction and specifically progesterone timing and how important that is. I know I think a lot of guys are still kind of old school. Like they see blood, they count so many days, and they still kind of go that route.
9, 11, 13.
Yeah, that's right. That's the old 9, school 11, method, 13. Right? So I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm not the younger generation, but I'm, I got a computer background, so I guess I'm like, no, we need to know like exact numbers.
You want data. You want hard numbers.
Yeah, we want to see the data.
Yeah.
But
I think nowadays it's numbers are important.
Yeah, exactly. So, so you do two different things. Obviously, you have studs. So, what in general do you tell your clientele after they lock your stud in? Like, what recommendations do you give them as far as communications wise with you?
I mean, it's pretty much the standard. I would hope it's the standard amongst stud owners. You notify me 72 hours within noticing bleeding, female coming in the heat, and then just keep me up to date on numbers. To me, numbers are important because that gives me time to prep my stud that's in question of being used.
Yeah, so, and I kind of do the same thing. So I tell them reach out to me the first day you see blood. At that point, I've got a pretty good idea of the time frame, right? Because if I've got other breedings planned, I can plan around theirs, knowing that they're going to be approximately in so many days.
Now, how does that work for you guys? Is that first come, first serve? Is it who reports that they're female is starting?
Well, luckily, I've never been. And I don't know, Karl, if you have been, but I've never been. I've had people that have last minuted me, like they just send me a message and say, "My girl's an 11 today," But luckily, it hasn't overlapped yet.
I've had a couple instances where it's overlapped, and I try my best to, like Pilo, for instance. There was a point in time where he had 3 breedings in a row. So luckily, one of the females was behind by a day, if you can say by a day, behind the other 2 females. The other 2 females, he actually pulled enough for me to split into 2, and it was more than enough to suffice. All 3 breedings took, to say the least.
And that was, I saw, it was like a while back, I saw some guy complaining, I would never accept a split semen sample. And I was like, well, number one, how would you know it was split?
Yeah, exactly.
And number 2, like if you're an ethical stud owner, the numbers your studs pull.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, if your dog pulls 1 billion, it's not a problem to split that in half. That's way more than that. So I mean, split's not really an issue. I don't know why that fallacy. I guess if dogs have really weak collections, then splitting it would not be good. But
I think it all goes back to people believe that more is needed.
Better?
Yeah, exactly.
More is
when
better.
in reality
Yeah.
it's not. You get the pictures on Facebook with the collections that are 12 milliliters, 13, 14, 15 milliliters. Like
Yep.
that's all prostate fluid. That's a waste.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, and that is a funny thing. They'll show that whole 16 mil tube, and they're like, "This, rah," and they're like,
Yeah.
"This thing's spun down, dude. We know it's
Yeah.
going to be like this big. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
don't play with this." But a lot of people don't know any better. So when they see that big 16 mil tube, they're like, "Yeah, that's what I'm going to get."
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, you're going to get a semen pellet, and then you're going to get about 6 mils of extender.
Yeah.
That's going to keep it alive, and that's what you're getting." But a lot of people don't know that. They just think when they get a tube, it's like milky and it's 6 mils. They think they just got 6 mils of semen. Like, no, these are dogs, not horses.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not putting out that much. In general, I tell them, I forgot to bring my comments up here. In general, I tell them, after you see blood, I generally tell them wait 3 to 5 days to do your first progesterone test. I used to say 5 days, but you know how weird females are. I've got, Karen's a great example. She come into heat 4 days later, she's a 10. Like she comes up so crazy fast. But then I have some females that they don't come up that fast. Like you'll test them 5-6 days later, and they'll be a 2.
Right.
Yeah.
They stall out.
They're just not coming up fast. So it's hard to give anybody any concrete advice on when to test.
Yeah, I had a client actually the other day. Female tested at a 15, and keep in mind I use the Wanfo fine care.
Right.
15 would be coming into ovulation, early ovulation, early fertilization. If you know the chart.
Right.
And I tell him to come back in a day
That
to
one.
retest that one to make sure she climbs. He came back the next day and she actually dropped back down.
Okay. Yeah.
So a lot of people say once they see ovulation, once they see the ovulation numbers, nothing else matters after that. It's a countdown. Well, I mean, nowadays you can't really go off of that unless you really, really know your female.
Right.
If it's a tried and true female where okay, day 5, 6, this is going off of IDEX numbers now.
Mm-hmm.
When she's at a 5 or between a 4.5 to a 6, that's ovulation already.
Right.
2 days later, she should be at a 9, 10, 11.
Should be.
You're doing your first, should be. Should be. You're doing your first AIs. Well,
right.
That may not be the case for some females, and people wonder why. Well, why didn't she take? You said that she was ovulating already. I waited and I did my first AIs. Well, I told you to come back.
Yeah.
You just went ahead and jumped the gun and did your breeding.
Yep.
Yeah,
and that's that hard part is getting them to understand how many tests you're probably going to do if your female is not progressing as predicted. Like we say, hey, do a test in 5 days, report back to me what she is. And they report back in 5 days and she's a 2. I'm like, okay, that's not good. Like we wanted it to be.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people don't understand the value of hitting that ovulation number, knowing what day ovulation was on. And I'm not really sure what's the old school prediction of when they're due. Like, how did they do it before they did progesterone? What's the days method?
Old school, they would do a count. So whatever they would count from first sight of blood.
Right.
Usually 7, 8, 9 days.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
Skip
2 days
2,
after that.
9, 11, 13.
Yeah, but how did they determine when she was ready? When she started pushing
the stud.
The male.
Yeah.
The male.
If she was letting the male mount,
right.
Because usually if a female's ready, they're going to be susceptible to the male. They'll be chasing the male.
Right.
Yeah. But there's some females they'll flag a warm breeze You know,
Right.
That too. Yeah, they will. Yeah.
you know.
What about
Case in point,
labor?
ours-
How are they predicting what day they'll go into labor?
I don't think they were predicting back then. It would just
Okay.
happen.
They were just
back
having like,
then,
oh shit, she's
yeah.
pushing puppies out.
Yeah, you're talking about old school back in the day where a lot of the technology now wasn't viable. It wasn't available. So they were doing natural births. The dogs were bigger back then too, so they were able to handle it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's they weren't counting.
Right. So that's why we consider ovulation so important, is because we base ovulation, not breeding date. I don't base it off the date I bred the bitch. I base her due date off of the day she was
Ovulation.
five. Yeah.
Right.
So I know, X amount of days past ovulation, this is the day she's due. Now you can back that up with an X-ray, make sure like the fine bones in the paws are developed, and
When do you X-ray?
reverse progesterone. I do my so I do a first peek at 30 days with an ultrasound.
Yep.
And then I do X-ray about 55 days.
On the same.
Yeah, just to kind of see what's swimming around in there.
So T Ray got a question. Does sperm always need to be spun down when doing a breeding?
It's suggested to do it because sperm does die off. You want as much good sperm as possible going in, without the garbage.
Yeah,
I'll call it. It's suggestible.
Yeah, and that really depends if you're doing a side by side, like a side by side AI, where the male's right there. It's still beneficial because here's the thing: you do that collection on that male. Let's say, I've got some dogs that'll do over 16 mils, like it's up in the bag. You know what I mean? Like, so I can't.
You want to concentrate that.
Yeah, so I don't want to put all 16 mils of fluid up inside this female. So it's suggestible. Hey, let's spin it down. Let's reduce that amount that we're putting in. That way, it's not running out of her. So that's beneficial. Now, if you're doing shipping, it's an absolute must. You have to spin it down, remove all the prostate fluid, and then add your extender.
That's how I do it. Yeah.
Now, do you add? So, if you're doing a side by side and you spin it down, do you add the extender?
You can, but you don't need to.
Yeah, you don't need to. I know people do, but I don't. Personally, I don't.
Now, I've had conversations about the benefits of maybe not removing all the prostate fluid, just to have some additional liquid in there for the sperm to swim in. Yeah. But we didn't wait for them. Pops to start. Yeah, there's Brad. He said we didn't predict litters. We just waited for them to start coming out.
Yeah, see.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing. Like,
I'd be
back
horrified.
then,
like, what?
You didn't really rely on the internet. Like, it
Right.
was a lot of side by side breedings.
Yeah.
It was very rare. You got ship semen. You were pretty much matching phenos at that point. Breeding back then was, doing dogs that matched in person.
A little more personal. Yeah. Yeah. So hitting that 5, that ovulation number, me as a stud owner, it doesn't really matter to me. But me knowing, okay, now she's ovulated, she's going, because the progression up to 5 and the progression past 5 is different speeds. Very slow to get to 5. After you hit a 5, then we start ramping up. And I've seen females double every day. Sometimes they double every day. Sometimes they move up slower. But what that really allows me to do is tell my client, okay, mark down today as the day of ovulation, and you're going to count past today as her due date. And I find that usually beneficial for them. They don't have a female that goes into labor in the middle of the night
unexpectedly.
Yeah, they're very predicted. And then we start talking to them about reverse progesterone too, but we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. So as far as that goes, you've got your clients reporting to you, okay, she's a 5 today. Most of the time, they really don't know when they should go for the next test, right? So they're always like, well, I'll take her in a week. And I'm like, no, you
Yeah.
but you might just smooth miss too. So,
Right.
but generally after they hit a 5, I'm telling them, okay, wait 2 days. Let's go see where she's at. Okay. If she's a 7, then, then we're going to have a conversation. How are you going to do this?
Yeah.
And I'll bring up, this is the IDEX, and there's a mini Vetus chart. I think this chart goes around for a lot of people, but it talks about, we see here ovulation being right around a 5 on IDEX, plus or minus there. The first breeding anywhere from 9 to 11. And then that'd be the AI, fresh chilled semen. And then down here, the higher numbers you see 19 up to 21 is for the surgical implantation of frozen semen or your last opportunity to breed. Now
you want those numbers to be high.
Yeah, I believe. Well, you know what? It's weird because I've done both. Like I've bred females at 7 to 10 with an AI, and they've been fine, took no problem. I've done just a regular AI with a female that was over 20, and she took no problem.
Yeah,
so
I've had the same experiences.
Yeah, so it's kind of been like, these are good recommendations, but at the end of the day, now if it's frozen, no question, she's over 20. We're not even thinking about doing the surgical before she's over 20. But as far as that goes, as far as fresh semen, pretty much from that range of 9 to 20, you can do it in there anywhere. But I like to, if I have the stud on hand, I'm going to back it up. So I'll run one at 10, then I'll run another one a couple days later. After I do the first breeding, after I hit that number right around 10 or whatever, then, I'll kind of jump into days mode. I'll be like, okay, we're running back again a couple days.
Yeah.
And it's surgical when it's really, for me, I feel like it's the most important. I want her to be as high as she can be, just because with the frozen semen, it doesn't live long, right? And you've got a very limited window, and so you got to get it in there when she is exactly ready.
Right.
So I think
what numbers have you lucked out with for surgicals? What do you think is the sweet spot for you?
For me, I tend to wait until they're like over 20. Okay. So the weird is, like on the IDEX machines, depending on the machine, if they do it, they do it in nanograms. I think it'll only report to 20.
Yeah.
And then it says over 20.
Over 20.
Yeah, that's it. But if you do it in, what's the other one? Nanograms and I can't remember the other one.
I forget. Nanograms is like the metric of.
Right. Yeah. But there's another one. Like I have a client in Canada. They don't use nanograms.
No. Yeah.
They use something else. I can't remember. It's straight.
It reads higher. It's
right.
Like,
the number's weird. He sent me a number.
Yeah.
I was like, shit, you already missed.
Yeah.
He's like, no, my vet said I'm fine. I'm like, no, man. Your girl's like a 17. You're in trouble right now. And then when I looked at, I said, send me the report. And it was an IDEX machine, but he printed it out. But it wasn't in nanograms. It was in that other thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I went and looked it up, and I was like, 3.5 multiplier. Okay. Yeah. No, you're good. You're safe.
Yeah.
But that was the first time for me. Can they see these comments? Yes, we can, Mr. Edwards. We can see your comments. And someone asked earlier who that song is by, and that was Loner Boy. He's at a lot of shows. So. But as far as I can't remember that. It was going to drive me crazy, but it's nanograms and there's something else.
Yeah.
But so
I
be
think
aware.
The WANFO refers to it also.
Oh, do they?
They got it aside from their numbers.
Yeah, these are nanograms on here. But that's the other thing that we want to kind of cover. If you're having progesterone tests done, you can't don't reach out to the stud owner and say, hey, she's a 7. And we're like, 7 what? Right. 7 on what? You know what I mean? If she's 7 on an IDEX machine, that means one thing. If she's 7 on a Wonderful, that's different, right? We can bring those charts up. You can see a 7 on an IDEX machine right? She's right starting to get into that range of that breeding range.
Yeah.
Right. But if we look at the fine care unit, a 7 would be just hitting ovulation, basically.
Yep.
Yeah, just estimating ovulation. So it's important that we know what machine these tests are being done on. That way we can accurately predict. Because obviously, if their bitch takes, that's success for us. Like, that's our job, is to make sure you have puppies. So we're going to help work with you and make sure that your numbers are right before we ship. And, there's a lot of things you have to consider, unfortunately, before we can just ship to semen to me because she said she's ready.
Is it picograms?
No, what was that? See, you're making me. Somebody's going to know. Who knows what it is? It's nanograms, and there's another one. Somebody's going to know.
Micrograms.
Yeah, here's a guy. No, this guy, Joseph, said, did a breeding with shipped semen with a regular AI. She was around 15 and got 4 nice pups. Cool.
Shit, Ashton's making me blush.
It's the nanomoles.
Nanomoles. There you go.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'd have never remembered that.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Ashton. Yeah, so be aware, if you're a stud owner, you're a new stud owner, may pay attention to where they are, because this is, especially for someone that's new, like this is your first stud, you're starting to push your stud for the first time, like there's a lot coming at you quick, right? Because most of the time your clients don't have nearly as much experience as you do, because you do it all the time, where they just do it. They have 1, 2 females.
And, depending on how many females they have.
Yeah, they just don't breed that much.
So
they're not faced with all this information constantly. So, but I think it's milliliters. That's a lot. I'm like, hey, put some milliliters up in there.
Damn,
but
elephant sample.
That's right. But yeah, so reach out, do your timing. Stay in contact with the stud owner, because if you have overlap, you may get yourself in a situation where the stud owner goes, I'm sorry, I didn't have a heads up. He has a breeding today, or he already had 2 breedings. So, I mean, I can do it tomorrow, but that you show it, you just pop in his messages that day and say, hey, I need it right now. You might be in trouble.
Yeah, you're gambling even more with your breeding.
And let me see. Got a bunch of messages here.
Yeah. Who brings the higher percentage, pheno or geno? I'm not sure what that question is.
I'm assuming he's asking the male or the female.
Yeah, it's always known as the female.
Yeah.
60% female, 40% male.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I follow that. I follow that. But sometimes I think that depending on the male and the blood that it carries, it can shine through.
Yeah.
It can shine through.
Well, and then the other thing you have to consider,
especially if his COI is high.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Highly concentrated.
Right. He's got a higher dominant base of genetics.
Dogs are 3-4 times a single stud. Just really highly concentrated. And the other thing you have to think about is you have a female, and maybe she's not the most bully female, but in her lineage is, let's say let's say a couple generations back, there's Grim in there, right? And then you bring a Grim stud to her, and it looks like that Grim stud did some amazing shit, right? Because all of a sudden all these puppies are super bully. But really what you did was you matched up some DNA on her side that she was carrying to the stud side and brought some of those bulls out.
Just brought it to light.
Yeah, because obviously if she's carrying some of those genetic traits and then you bring another stud to it that carries those same genetic traits, what they call homozygosity, when the pairs match up, then you got bulls. So what are we done? We've done so far. We've said, okay, report to us. And then we get those numbers kind of squared away. And then obviously the 2 testing types are different. And we had Mini Vetus and the Find Care, but is there another popular one that other people use?
No, as far as number, it's just the big three:
Okay.
IDEX, Minivitas, and Find Care. I know there's a fourth one, but that's I've heard very little about it.
So that's so we got those all covered. So at this point, your stud owner has agreed. Boom, time to ship. You know, he does his collection. He extends it. He ships it. Most of the time, I try to ship to the vet. I don't know if it matters to you, but I think with FedEx, especially, it seems like if you're shipping to a business, it just gets there more consistently than if you're shipping to someone's house.
We don't.
I believe that.
Bring up FedEx right now. That's a whole nother. That's a whole nother show.
You guys over there.
I mean, you want to talk about bashing? We can bash FedEx for.
I've only had
hours.
Probably two instances where FedEx got my clients, and it was shipped to the infamous Memphis hub.
The Memphis hub. Was it winter time?
Yeah, it was during some storms.
Yeah, it always seems like winter. And honestly, be aware if you have a female, you contact that stud owner on Friday, and you say, "Hey, I need it shipped today." Doesn't matter what time of year it is.
Gambling with your breeding again.
Yeah, a Friday to Saturday is always sketchy.
Yeah. Especially if you live in the country.
Yes.
Especially if you live in the country, it's going to be harder for your shipment to get to you.
Yeah, but if her timing is going to end up being a Saturday or a Sunday, reach out to that stud owner and see if they'll do freight. They're going to charge you more. Yeah. Absolutely, they're going to charge you more.
And you got to pick it up.
All you got to do is go to the airport and pick it up. You know, he'll drop it off at the airport, and that same day, boom, it shows up at the airport on the other end.
It depends on how important that breeding is. Some people get on a plane.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Meet me at the airport. I will bring it back myself.
I've jumped on a plane myself 2 times to deliver because it was an important breeding for the client.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, we've had clients drive 7-8 hours in a car, just to come and do the breeding side by side. Which, if that's an option, 2 things: one, you get to see the stud in person. You're not just seeing videos or pictures. You get to see the stud in person. And I don't care on each end of your opinion of what the dog is. It's going to be different when you see it in person. It's always a good idea. But if you can come and see the dog in person and you do a side by side, to me, that's my preference. If she's right in the good numbers, like I think those. Well, it was weird that one client, they lived in New York. I believe their female was a 7 when they left. They showed up to us.
7 on what?
On IDEX.
Okay.
Yeah. If I don't specify, it's IDEX. But so they I believe she was like a 7 when they left. So they drove from New York to West Virginia. They got here, and in the morning I said, "Let's run up to my vet. We'll do a progesterone test and let's see where she's at." Right? She's over 20. And so I gave you
educate your vet.
Yeah, do what?
Did you have to educate your vet
about what? Oh, me? Yeah. No, they're squared away now. They're
Samantha
good.
does it all the time.
Yeah, they're good. They're good now.
Samantha does it all the time.
But she's over 20, so I tell them, okay, now you're honestly, you're in surgical range. You're in 20. You're kind of surgical range. They opted not to do it. They opted to do an AI. So we went ahead and did it. And I think they ended up having 6. I think it was 6 puppies on an AI. And they took her back home. Boom. Everything turned out great. So, but that just goes to show you how crazy fast those females can come up on you if you don't have history. Dina, thank God, documents. Every time a female comes in, we're documenting the day she starts to bleed, and then what progesterone number she was on what date. So that next breeding season comes in, we say, okay,
you have a baseline.
Yeah, she started bleeding, and last year or last heat, 4 days she was a 5, right? So that gives us, not that they're going to be Sam, numbers aren't important after ovulation. That may be true, but I'm a numbers person. I like them.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm just getting all these numbers.
I mean, what if she went backwards?
Yeah.
They
Right.
can. Yeah, absolutely. They can bounce around. But post ovulation, just like you said, you could pretty much go by days post ovulation if you wanted to. But with the exception of a surgical, I still want to have numbers on the surgical. But
I had a client. He tested, and within a day. So the first initial day he came, and this is a female that I'm gonna say that he quote unquote knows.
right,
Okay. He came to me and actually to Naya, and she tested the female, and female read at a 16. So she told the client, come back tomorrow. He came back, and she jumped all the way up to a 50.
oh
Now, keep
geez,
in mind, on the fine care of anything past a 45
right,
is exactly late fertile range.
yep,
I told him, I was like, you know what? This is an in-house breeding for you. So it wouldn't hurt for you to do the breeding.
right,
Why not? It's your stud.
exactly.
Do it. See what happens. He called 60 days later, had a litter of 10.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, see, I mean, numbers are good, but I think it varies from female to female, machine to machine.
Right.
In the end,
Yeah.
we're playing with luck.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all it is. I always tell the clients when they come for live breedings, whether it be with my studs or other studs in the state of Michigan. At the end of the day, if your female drops eggs and the sperm is good, you're gonna have puppies. Granted that everything from that point on is okay. There's no infections,
Right.
no, stress levels don't run too high. Then you'll be good. You're gonna have some puppies. But if your female doesn't do her part, then there's nothing you can do because this is gonna go back to the owners of the female. They'll go back and blame stud owners. Oh, my female didn't take. You sent me duds. This and that. Blah blah blah.
Right.
No, I didn't. Your female just didn't drop eggs for whatever reason, or she caught an infection. It's the two most important things.
Or she absorbed.
Yeah, or she absorbed.
I mean, there's a
for
ton
whatever
of
reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's always the stud that gets the blame.
Yeah.
It just always is. It always is.
I mean, it's not the stud that's carrying the pups.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, so let's go back to the basics, right? The amount of puppies in the litter determines, the female determines how many pups are in the litter, right? By the amount of eggs she drops.
Right.
And then the stud, I see all the time, the stud determines the genders of those pups.
Yes.
Right? It's just like people. But, you just see all those posts, my boy, my stud dropped
Yeah.
15 pups. Well, I mean, there's two.
No. The female had 15 eggs.
Yeah, right.
The swimmers got there though, so we'll give him credit for that.
It's just like, it takes two to tango. They're both, mother and father, they played their part. They both, when it was time to hit the ball, they both hit a home run.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. It's like perfect timing.
Yeah.
A perfect, series of events.
As D. Jones said, females starts dropping eggs at 8. Soon as the numbers hit 8, I AI them the next morning, skip a day, and go back and haven't missed yet.
If that works, that works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I run across that a lot. Like, yeah, this is what works for me, right? Because I guess I'm kind of nerdy and I just like the numbers, and
Right,
I just,
right.
we know that numbers here, these all things work. But if you have a tried and true process that works for you and you've not missed yet, then
Especially
I can't
if you're
blame you.
working. if you're working with blood you're familiar with, if it's your own, like second, third generation, you can almost count on the baseline being the same.
Yeah.
Mother to daughter, because we've had females where we're on one specific line. We're in our third generation of these females, and every single one of them has been consistently producing 8 pups at a time.
Nice.
Like that's the low number.
Is that, and what's your, let me ask you guys, what's your, do you have a preferred litter size?
6.
6.
I'm like, if it's above 6, I'm
I
like,
can't even answer.
No.
Samantha,
Oh.
what's your preferred litter size?
Yeah.
she's in here, I see. But yeah, I mean, you give me 4 or 5, I'm happy. That's good.
Yeah.
Because I only need one.
I'm just, so
Yeah,
I'm gonna just disclaimer. I am not a breeder.
Okay.
I am an American Bully enthusiast.
Right.
Samantha is the breeder. She whelps the litters. She vets that. She's the breeder.
Right.
I'm the butler. Let's get it straight.
That's all right.
I'm not an expert of anything. I just love this breed and everything about the process.
Here's an interesting question. The guy asked, what physical traits does the male carry over the female in the puppies? And unfortunately, with genetics, it is a so if we look at it, it's easier to understand traits like color, right? Because those are mapped out.
Yeah, right.
And we know you could have a solid color male that carries 1 copy of tan points. You could have a solid color female that carries 1 copy of tan points. You could breed them together and you will get tricolored puppies from 2 solid colored dogs. So unfortunately, there's a lot of aspects of the American Bully, or the dog genome, basically, that hasn't been mapped out, and we don't know who's bringing what to the table. Unfortunately,
Yeah. I mean, you could say, oh, I have a female and she needs a head. I'm going to breed to this dog, this such and such stud, because he got a 27-inch head.
right?
And then you get pit bull heads.
Yeah.
It didn't work out so much.
Yeah, because every puppy, and that's the problem, is every puppy has a 50-50 chance of getting the trait from dad or mom, right?
Yep.
And on top of that, let me try to get this right. There's about 30,000 alleles that are passed on by each parent, but a puppy only receives 15,000 from each parent, right? And it could be any number. So the father has 30,000 alleles. It could be any number of those alleles that they get the 15,000 of, right? So that's why your litter will look completely different, right? And what's beneficial is that when you have those highly inbred males, a lot of their alleles are homozygous. Where is it? Homozygous, whatever. Forgot that word. But anyway, where those alleles are matched up. So when you have 2 identicals, the puppy's going to get one of them, either way.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Now, do you think with what you just said, do you think the more inbred the stud is, or how can I say it?
Do you increase the chance of?
No, let's say, for instance, let's take Brim.
Okay.
He's real good at passing on a lot of his traits.
Right.
His big head, his bone. What do you think that contributes to? Like, why?
Because even though that is not, because that wasn't an inbreeding, that was a complete outcross.
Yeah.
But even though the blood wasn't the same, the traits that mom carried and the traits that Grimm brought were similar. They had similar traits.
It was a line breeding.
It was a line breeding?
Yeah.
I don't know what her other
half.
Was.
I believe Grimm has situation, and obviously Bluebee's
situation. Yeah.
So we're going pretty far back at that point.
you did match at some point. It did.
Because every generation that percentage goes down
Yeah.
considerably. So when you say your stud's great great grandfather was this, all right. Well,
Right.
now you're down into like single digit percentages of his effect on your dog, right? The more upfront it is, the higher likely, that he carries a lot of those traits. So a grim son is going to carry a lot of Grimm's traits. A grim grandson or great grandson is not going to carry as many of Grimm's traits because he's so far back. It's getting, every time it gets bred to another blood, it gets watered down a little bit more. So, what's this? I've
completed 20 litters, and I
I was
used
looking at right now.
PG wand. I start the breeding based off the digital number 7 or 700 and up. Do 1, 2, or 3 AIs for the client. Sometimes I can just touch the female or feel if she's opened up and determine if she's ready.
So I'm gonna touch on that last part. Feel if she's opened up.
Yep.
I've since doing this. I started back in summer of 2020, and that last statement, I could feel if she's opened up and she's ready. That's a very, very true statement.
Yeah.
Because the more and more I did breedings, not only for myself but for other clients, because I use my finger to guide the rod.
Yeah.
When I do AIs, and you could just tell if the female was primed.
Yeah.
Or she's accepting of a stud.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, exactly. So what T-Ray just said, that's very true.
Very, very true. Very true.
Yeah.
And
It's
that
a very hands-on approach.
Yeah.
I don't do the AIs. I'll do the collections, but I don't do the AIs. Dina does most of them. But that is a comment I hear from her a lot.
Mm-hmm.
When she's doing the AI, she's very tight.
Yeah.
And you can tell, like, sometimes they're very receptive, sometimes they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And so that as soon as I started reading that, I was like, I know exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But there's some females who start bleeding and they're already receptive.
Yeah.
It's a variant. It always varies. Each female is different.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the people that are commenting, they're working with generations of their own production. So
right.
That baseline is pretty steady.
Yeah, pretty predictive. Right. You'll have females that I'll have females that bleed very little. You'll see 1 drop of blood on the floor, and that was your one indication, because you're not going to see it. I see a lot.
Do you think those females are susceptible to pooling?
I would think so. Yeah. Especially if you could see like a female that isn't bleeding that much, but when she pees, then it comes pouring out.
Right.
What I mean? So yeah, for sure about that. But I've had a female that you'll see 1 or 2 drops of blood on the floor, and if you missed it that day, if you mopped that up and you didn't see it, you're going to miss your breeding, right? Because she flies up in her numbers real quick, and you may not get the second chance to see more blood. That was it. That was all you had to see. Right. So, and then I've got some that honestly they bleed so bad, you want to take them to the vet and be like, I think she cut herself internally or something. Like there's no way this is normal. Like just bleed like crazy. So everything is so down to the individual female, and that's why documentation helps a ton. Because if you contact your stud owner and you say, hey, I want you to ship on this date, if those numbers don't jive in his head, he's going to be like, well, I don't know. I mean, I'll ship it, but I don't feel like she. But if you have history and you say, no, we've been tracking her ovulation over the last few of her heats, and we know this is what's going to happen, then I'm cool with it. Obviously, your female better than me. But if you have no data whatsoever, then we're going to try to go by my numbers where I feel like your chance of success is higher. But obviously, if you have numbers on your female, what your female's going to do, then obviously we're going definitely with what you know about your female.
Right. And when you're doing these, so with a female that doesn't give you a lot of indication that she's in heat, and you can suspect pooling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you? So T-Ray touched on it. Um, have anyone drained their female? Well, if you're doing an AI, you're going through the same path to fertilize her eggs. So you're really pushing old blood into, you know, where her eggs are dropping.
Yeah.
Right.
You
That
can
makes
make a
sense.
female sick that way. So a lot of people who have experience will drain the pooling out.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
We drained a client's female. It was 32 mils
Wow.
of blood. Yeah, 32
Yeah.
mils of blood.
Now that would have probably more to do with like the hip angle.
Yeah, the hip
Mhm.
angle, the position of the cervix.
Yeah, they're gonna have like a high
Yeah.
tail set, and their hips are kind of
Mhm.
tilted up, and it just doesn't allow it to.
Yeah,
No,
I found
absolutely.
it. Females with what's the word? Inverted.
Okay.
The ones that are inverted down there
Mhm.
are the ones that have that are susceptible to pooling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not had that problem, luckily. I got one that bleeds very little, but when she pees, it kind of
Splatters.
pouring
Yeah.
out. Just like, oh my god, what the hell? But yeah, just she doesn't just walk around dripping blood everywhere. And I've got other ones that do exactly that. You could pretty much trace their steps throughout the day because they're just dripping blood everywhere.
Now, we all have multiple females. Do they synchronize their heats?
Oh yeah. Yeah. All my females are synchronized.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, because here's the thing. I don't want to have 7 litters on the ground at once. You know what I mean? But I want to breed all these dogs, But if they all come in together, then I'm just like, all right, I just got to choose who's going to get
Right.
bred this time,
Yeah.
The last one, what was it? I did so we did the little bit breeding, and then we did precious. So we did those but we did them a few weeks apart. So I knew that about the time my pups were going to be 4 weeks old is about the time Precious would drop her litter. So that's the closest I've ever done them. And just back to back, damn fly, back to back. Even it was rough. It was rough. I don't know how Samantha, every time she was like, oh, we got
She's a
3 or
wild
4
woman.
litters at once. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
superwoman.
That was what,
She's
2
a
years
wild-
ago when you guys had the back-to-backs? What was it, like 6 litters in a row or something like
Oh
that?
my god, no! She took on. I think we had 2 litters drop days apart, and then she had some whelping clients scheduled.
Oh, that's
Like-
what it was. Yeah.
She's a maniac. She's next level. There's very few people in the world that can maintain their composure and still have daily function and do all that. And
Yeah.
that's why I say I'm not a breeder. She's the breeder.
I was ready to off myself this past one because the day that Naya and I had the baby
Yeah.
was the same day that Sasha had her
Right.
litter. So I was bouncing back and forth from the whelping box to the crib, whelping box to the crib.
Yeah.
There's a slow one. My girl was a 5 last Friday and then at a 10 yesterday. Yeah, she's moving up slow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's stalling at its best.
Yep. Now the bad thing is that she's a 10 yesterday and she could be a 17 tomorrow.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about it.
Yeah.
When a female stalls, that's one of the reasons why I got into progesterone testing for myself. Is we owned a female, the infamous Jean Grey,
Mm-hmm.
and when she went into heat, I was doing my grim breeding, and I must have spent close to $1,700 in progesterone testing alone.
Yeah.
Before she was ready, and she was just everywhere. She would come up, come down, come up, come down, come up, come down, you know, and with her, I was planning on doing a surgical. And yeah, $1,700 later, we finally did the surgical. It was crazy.
Now we picked up a fine care machine, but because prior to this point, I've always used IDEX.
Mhm.
And I think the worst thing a person can do is buy a fine care machine and then you still be in that IDEX mode, right? Because you're going to be in bad shape.
Yeah.
Like those numbers, oh, damn, it's funny. Every time I put my hand up there, it moves the camera.
You're going to mess yourself up.
Yeah, you're going to screw yourself up big time. So what I'm doing temporarily until my confidence level is high with the fine care machine is that I'll test the dogs on my machine.
Mm-hmm.
For temporarily, I'm still backing it up,
cross-referencing
on my IDEX testing to say, okay, you know, fine care says she's at ovulation. Let's see what IDEX says.
Yeah.
But eventually, after I'm like confident in the machine and I feel like the numbers are consistent, then, you know, at that point, I'm just doing all the tests right here at home, which the cost is phenomenally cheaper. And if you're a person that really likes to test, it can get real expensive if they don't come up predictably.
Right. Yep.
So Shada asked a question: when you have your own progesterone kit, how far apart in days do you test? Well, you can test every day.
Yeah, that's the beauty. That's
Yeah.
the beauty of having your own machines. You can test as much as you want.
Yeah.
But eventually you come to a point where you know your females. You know, your females that come and tweet, you know. It sucks if you do venture out into doing it for other clients. It's a learning process for them because they're in the IDEX mindset, and you have to break it to them. Like I tell my clients, you got to forget all that, forget all you know, because you're stepping into my world now. And once they do that, they realize, okay, I can trust this machine just as much as I trust IDEX machines, but it still costs them money because they're still coming for tests. But that's the beauty of it, because 90% of the time, I'm cheaper than the vet.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah, and the cheaper it is, obviously, the more willing you are to test. Because, I mean, there's vets charging $100, or I don't even know what some people pay. Throw it in the comments what you guys are paying for IDEX tests. But, you know, they get super expensive. And if you got a female that's kind of all over the place, that makes it tough.
I want to see the cost in New York, California, Oregon, a lot of these anti-breeder states.
So we've been to the vet 3 different times.
$300 in Maine.
Oh,
and it's sent out, so you don't even get results in half an hour.
And it's sent out.
It's a few hours. Yeah.
$55 for John. Nothing wrong with
Where
that.
You at, John? Yeah. Gina,
$200 in Maine.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right.
So that $200, you're paying for the overnight shipping to the IDEX.
Right.
Yeah, that's what's happening. $70, 120.
Next day, see, when it comes to
he's in
breeding,
Mississippi. $80 a pop there. So it seems like maybe, well, I mean, there were some 55s in there.
Yeah.
No, hold on. So vets, how much are you paying at a vet? You know, not someone who has mastered
your homeboy progesterone machine.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if your buddy's got a fine care, he's probably cutting you a break. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
But it seems like, 55, 125, 200. Man, that 200 is crazy.
Yeah.
It's because they send it out.
Yeah. Yeah, Mississippi was $55. That's not too bad.
Yeah, Mississippi.
But you pick up a machine, which is a pretty substantial investment. I don't even remember what it costs, to be honest with you. But you can run a test anytime you want. And if you're looking to really dial it in, having the machine right here, being able to test whenever you want is great. Mm-hmm. And especially if you have a female that comes up quick, like she takes her a while to get to 5, but as soon as she hit 5, she rockets. Right. And if you have that kind of having your own machine to be able to test it is a huge advantage.
Mhm.
because you're going to end up what? I hope that's not 3,400. I don't know about that. Was that the surgical?
Where's that?
That's crazy. But if she shoots up like a rocket, okay, she had a 5, you took her the next day, she was still a 5, you take her 2 days later, she's a 6. Like it can stack up quick. So if it's something you get too advanced enough to get your own, or be able to find someone like Karl that has defined care machine that can obviously save you some money, he's not going to charge you $200. I promise you that.
No.
Yeah.
What are you guys charging to do the test?
We're at 60 a test, and then for 200 you can get a bundle. Yeah, 200 we offer a bundle.
Which you're probably going to need anyway. So
Yeah. So, and then on top of that, like say for instance, the client only uses 2 tests, then that can carry over to an AI. Or
nice.
if they want to, or if they want to save it for the next go around, or if they have another female in heat that they want to get a test on, then they can do it towards that too. Yeah,
Now, let me ask you, Karl, now that you've got the female bred, you confirmed at 30 days with the x-ray or with the ultrasound, you did an x-ray at 55 days. I had a feeling this was going to lose my brain. So I was like, hit that. So I'm going to ask this question, then I forget it. Do you, I don't know, do you guys reverse progesterone? Do you put a value in reverse?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I do. So I'm kind of weird about it. I go based off ovulation, the count, but I do 2 counts. I'll start my first count from ovulation, and then I'll start my second count from the first AI.
Okay.
And I've found that I'm usually between that count, if not dead on.
Because in reality, it's only a few days apart generally. So
exactly, yeah.
So typically, what day would you say
For what?
that
start doing reverse?
Right.
Reverse progesterone, I'll start like at day 57, 58.
Okay.
When they're in the safe zone.
Yeah, when they're in the safe zone. It hasn't failed me yet. Luckily, I've experimented with the Wanfo, because it even says if you're going to do reverse progesterone testing with the Wanfo machine, you got to cross-reference it. So just like I did in the beginning, learning it, I started doing that with the reverse. And I've gotten comfortable enough to run reverse progesterones on the Wanfo to give a client a window.
Now, what are you, so for people, for educational purposes, what are you looking for in a reverse progesterone?
In a reverse progesterone, numbers, low numbers.
Low numbers.
Yeah. Low numbers.
Somebody wanted to know if you were close to South Bend.
South Bend, Indiana. I believe I'm like 3.5 hours from South Bend. I think. Yeah, 3.5, because that's like by the border. So 3.5 hours.
Yeah. So when we do reverses, we're kind of looking for anything below 2. Yeah. Anything below 2. But generally, let me see. Let me see what this Sam said. You should hold a class on the Wanfo. A lot of people with those machines have been.
You know what? That's not the first time. Yeah. I've been asked to go live and talk about the Wanfo just because of what you said, Sam. A lot of people have been way off with those machines. I mean, Sam, you know, all the testing that I've done with the breedings that I've done with you have all been through my machine. And, you know, with the exception of Laura Jean, and she's a special case just because I think she might have too much testosterone to even have puppies. But aside from her, every female that I've taken to one of the studs on the SSS Bully Yard, it's all hit using the Wanfo. I've been thinking about it, but I don't know. You can always message me if you have questions.
Yeah.
Because it would go to it would be a long session. Just put it that way.
Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that the Wanfo units back in the day, I know every box of tests came with a new progesterone chart. Right. So
Yeah.
you had a box of tests that came with a progesterone chart. When you got a new box of tests, you couldn't assume that that was the same progesterone chart. It was actually those numbers varied per kits of progesterone charts. Now, from what I can tell these days, that doesn't vary. Like we're pretty much using the same progesterone chart for the new kits. So
we talked about it when you first got your machine. And I think I mentioned it where when I first started testing it, every time I got kits, it would come with a new chart, new number, new you know, up until maybe last year, winter of last year, it finally was just one chart. So I think Wamfo finally came to a medium of, okay, these are the numbers that are pretty much correct, and this is what we're gonna go by, and this is what we're gonna just push from here on out.
right.
No,
I've even
other
gone as far as going to different distributors for the test kits, and it's all the same, same chart.
are there updates you have to do to your machine?
Supposedly there are, but I've never had to update. It's been the same. All I do is stick my calibration stick in there and calibrate it from time to time, and
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, Sam said, I hear it all the time. My guy has been doing it for years. He knows what he's doing. Then they do a test at the vet at IDEX, and it's way off.
Yeah.
I don't fault the machine. I fault the user.
Yeah, it's always going to be the user.
Yeah.
I'll say that straight up. It's always going to be the user.
Well, even after you spin down the blood, if you don't get the proper amount of serum, you could screw it up.
Yeah.
If you don't feed the proper amount into the test itself, you could screw it up. The numbers will be off. So that's not a machine. It's not like buying a microwave and throwing a pizza in it. Like you got to figure out how to make sure you're doing everything properly, or you're going to get inaccurate numbers.
Yeah.
But that's no different than IDEX. If you screw up on IDEX, you're going to get screwed up numbers too.
Yeah.
The difference is those are generally trained vet, you hope, trained vet professionals that know how to use the machine.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I've had clients that will send me a message and said, hey, my vet says she's ready today. And I'm like, okay, cool. Can you send me a copy of the test numbers? And they send me the numbers, and it's like IDEX 3.5. And I'm like, no, she's not ready.
That's a vet looking to sabotage.
Yeah. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And you know how many times I've heard breeders talk about how their vets are like, they don't support breeders.
Yeah.
Right.
So they'll do shit like that to them and tell them they're ready when they're not. And I'm like, I don't know I don't know that scenario, but I can tell you when you send me a report and it's a 3.5, you're not ready.
Yeah.
Right. But a lot of these, some vets don't, let's say they don't support breeders. There's a lot that don't support breeders, but some just don't do it enough to know, right? For instance, our vet, I'd mentioned before, Samantha's had to educate them a couple times because it was something that wasn't a normal process for them, right? So we had taken a female in and we ran her numbers, and we found ovulation, and we brought her back in a couple days later to recheck the numbers to see if she's spiked, she's climbed, she's descended in numbers. And the vet had said, well, she's a 24. I think it's too late. And Samantha had pressed the issue and said, well, that's knowing her generationally, her mother and how she was bred, that and the results that came from doing a breeding at 24, 25, especially being 2-3 days after ovulation. We pressed the issue and said, no, we want a breeder. We'll do the surgical. We have the semen on hand. and we had a litter of 10. She's the one that did the C-section, and she
Right.
was amazed.
Yeah.
Amazed with the results. So then, from then on, she knew exactly, whenever we're doing a surgical insemination, if we're in the 20s, it's a go.
It's a go. Yeah.
Now, someone brought up this was interesting right here because they said they love the Wanfo plus the whole blood test, which I know we had that conversation about doing whole blood versus serum and the accuracy of whole blood versus serum. I mean, I guess if you do whole blood all the time, maybe, I don't know. What was that? Because I remember we had a conversation at one point about doing whole blood versus serum testing.
Yeah. They say that doing whole blood is a little more accurate than doing serum, but I mean, I'm used to doing serum. So I'm going to stick with the serum.
Right.
I mean, serum is what they do at the vets,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be Mini Vitas or IDEX. So it's tried and true. Wanfo is just trying to make it easier on their clients to do whole blood versus serum. And I think they went with whole blood testing due to coming out with a portable progesterone machine.
Right.
It's actually handheld now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So these current machines that are out, people have, are they designed to be mobile?
I mean, they push it to be mobile. They sell a case and actual power strip and everything to become mobile. But I mean,
Got a handle, right?
Yeah, and a handle.
And a battery.
Yeah. Yeah, they got a battery.
Yeah, they got a battery in
them. Yeah, I mean, but the new one is actually smaller. It's actually handheld, and you just draw the blood, put it in your test strip, and then stick it in the machine. That's it.
If you do get one, I think my recommendation there would be if you do transport it on a regular basis to recalibrate it
every
time you arrive.
Yeah,
that's where I was leaning because I used to work for pharmaceutical industry. We made cancer medications, and I did a lot of work with the instrumentation techs, and a lot of these machines that they serviced, they were mounted, and they're on rubber mounts.
Yeah.
Because even the vibration of them would throw its own calibration off.
Yeah.
So
right.
You're lugging around a vital piece of equipment, it's bouncing around your vehicle, it's going to be out of calibration.
Yeah. Mine's right here, and it never moves. This is where it stays. I don't move it.
Mine's sitting over there on my toolbox.
Yeah. It's just that was my fear. I'm like, yeah, it's portable, but I don't. I'd be afraid to move it around too much and bang it around and then have to recalibrate it. And really, if you look at anything, if you want to be consistent, it's eliminate as many variables as possible. Right. So if it doesn't move, if you're using, you're doing everything consistently, then you're going to get consistent results. Right. But if you're mixing things up, then you're going to get inconsistent results. Yeah, we had talked about that earlier. Sam says that's why it's important to check early, ideally 5 days after first blood. That should give enough time to properly check levels and progression.
Yeah,
exactly.
I agree with that.
That way we can line up your breeding, line up your shipment, and don't get me wrong. Like if you message me and you're like, "Hey, I tested her yesterday. She was a 5. We tested her again today. She's a 10." I get it. Shit happens. You're gonna get it. Trust me. I'll make sure it's there. But it's just if you put the stud owner in a weird spot, if he's got a breeding that day and then you message him and you're like, "Hey, my girl's at a 12," and this is literally the first time you reached out to him, it just puts him in a tough spot.
Yeah,
but we still job, so we make sure it gets done.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I had a first time client yesterday. He reached out to me, and obviously I send all clients now to Naya because she took over that whole aspect. I'll speak when I'm asked a question.
Sure.
And he had one of those questions where his female came in at a 5. And I was like, "You can come in 2 days." And he was like, what does she need to be at ideally to breed? I said, well, on my machine, we could start at a 20. If she's like at an 18, 19, we can start then too. It doesn't hurt. But this is the first time she's been bred. Third heat, she just hit 19 months. And he was like, what's a good day to come on her 5th or the 6th day? I was like, earlier the better, because this is her first time. You want to get that baseline number for
Right.
future reference.
Yeah.
I was like, are you sure it's 5 days coming into blood? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay, so for future reference, now you know from first day sight of blood, 5 days later, she should be at this number.
Exactly.
You could
Right.
wait a little longer now, so you don't spend as much in testing.
Right.
You know, but that's just for future reference. Being it's her first time, it's good to get early testing now.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
Spend
It's
a little
always
more
good to
now,
do.
that way you save money later,
exactly,
for sure.
exactly.
And time, because you can miss it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
I mean, so a lot of people have a lot of thought and planning and
Yep.
invested in a breeding, the stud fee, and you miss it. Depending on what your contract is with the stud owner, you might require something else on the second breeding, or
Right.
You never know.
Yeah, I don't think any stud owner gets particular. Like, yeah, I mean, we understand the first you missed. It happens. Shit happens, right? If you miss the second time, now we're gonna have to get real finite about
Yeah,
the thing. We're gonna have to get a real close approach to try to figure out what exactly is going on and why she's.
yeah. Hildry here in the chat. He's a prime example.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we had a breeding to his Pilo daughter, back to Pilo. We did he was the first one to do that breeding, and before that, he was having trouble with her, just because timing was off. Either she climbed too fast, or it went back to the whole, she came in on a weekend. So obviously he wouldn't get the shipment until Tuesday unless freight was paid.
Right.
And it got to the point where I told him we got to buckle down, and everything from here on out has to be like,
Boom, boom, boom. Yep.
yeah. And luckily enough, this time around, he succeeded.
Cool.
So,
yeah, I don't like me personally. I don't mind doing freight, but the nearest major airport to me here in the woods is 2 hours away.
yeah, you got to drive all the way to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that means you're going to miss your breeding if you don't get this freight, right? Then absolutely, that we're going to do what it takes.
Right.
But if well planned, FedEx is not a problem. You just be aware of weekends, because shit can go sideways on the weekends for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had shipments. We've had
What if
shipments
it's
a
doing
week
natural
late,
tie?
7 days late, 4 days late.
There's a ton of reasons why I would never do that, but
Brucellosis.
Natural tire, brucellosis, fights.
fights, damage.
Right.
Yeah,
The fact that the stud weighs 110 pounds and your female 60,
yeah.
like she's just gonna get crushed.
Right.
You're bringing the female into a world where there's, like over here, we got a lot of males, and you're just gonna get riled up, and
And everybody's gonna get pissed.
yeah,
Mhm.
you know. It's,
Yeah,
I
when the
wouldn't
females are in heat, the boys go out one at a time.
Mhm.
That way we don't never let them boys close to each other, because shit just happens.
Yeah, and these dogs is too big to be getting in fights.
Yeah, I would never, ever, ever let them natural tie. Matter of fact, for the most part, even when I see the boys, like if I have a female that's, she's over heat, but he's still attracted to her, obviously. You know, you'll see Mac or somebody chasing the girl around. I'm like, he's not going to get it anyway. He's going to run from him. So I'll just, good exercise. Good luck, buddy. Go ahead and have it. You ain't getting it. But
Poor guy.
so we did reverse. We're down to reverse. We've done a reverse, and we know we're pulling pups below 2. At least, at the very least, below 2. If you're sure not 100%, like my vet wants to do, if it's below 2, just barely below 2, they still want to try to do an X-ray every once in a while because they want to see like the development of the bones and the paws and stuff like that. This last one, she was a 1. Like, she never gave me any indication that she was ready whatsoever.
Yeah.
She was just still sitting around, still eating, still like no indication. It was Dina's birthday. We were getting ready to go to dinner. She was like, I took her temperature this morning and it was like 98. And I'm like, okay, well, and that's the other thing we didn't even cover was like temperature. But we monitor the temperature, but she was the 98. And I was like, okay, so we'll take her to the vet. Took her to the vet, did a reverse progesterone on IDEX. She was a 1.
Ooh, so she was in labor for a while.
She was ready to pop off.
Yeah.
In the moment. But you never know. She was no sign, 0 sign whatsoever.
Oh yeah,
it was crazy.
So you guys do go off the temperature?
Yeah,
too.
yeah. We use it's
What do you
part
do?
of. So
6 hours under 100.
That's kind of the threshold if I start reverse also. So
And that,
I know like approximate days, but we'll also do temperature. And so when we see that drop, that because they'll drop below 100, but then they'll come right back up.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm looking for that drop below 100 and stayed below 100 for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
And then now I'm off to the vet's office to do a reverse.
Yeah.
The onset of labor can happen incredibly fast.
Yeah.
Samantha, for instance, was monitoring temperature on a female we had. And she literally took her temp and said, "Oh, no, she's good." We had her, in the living room being comfortable on the couch. She went upstairs to do something. And I was in the living room with her the entire time. And it was literally 5 minutes later, she wants to nest on the couch.
Yikes.
Oh, really?
And I was like, "Hey, I think she's in active labor."
Yeah.
And sure enough, we threw her in the car, went to the emergency vet. Yeah, and she delivered that day.
Oh, crazy.
But it was literally 5 minutes. Her temp was high, nothing to be concerned about. 5 minutes later, she's trying to nest.
That's crazy.
Do you, when you go to the vet for the X-rays, obviously, does your guys' vet check the size of the heads?
They don't do that. So there's 2 reasons we'd X-ray. One was just to get a puppy count to see, because we like to know how many little puppies we're getting. But then the second one, right before like a C-section, we're basically just looking for bone development.
Right.
But I very rarely do that. That's so there's 2 couple situations. Number one, just like you had mentioned, temperature is not always the best indicator. And this is why I like all this data, because reverse progesterone is not always a good indicator either.
Yes.
Because I've had females that were in numbers as far as temperature, their progesterone was 2.4, was not dropping. But the fact that we know this female so well, we were like, okay, her progesterone is not dropping below a 2, and our vet will almost refuse to do it if it's below a 2, if it's not below a 2.
Yeah.
Because they just don't want premature puppies.
What if she's day 63?
Yeah. Well, no, that's it. Yeah, I think I can't remember what day she was on, but her progesterone was not coming down. But we could tell by the way she was acting, where it was like, it's time. So it doesn't matter. We'll sign whatever you want us to sign. Right. You're taking the puppies right now. Damn the reverse progesterone. We don't care.
How big was the litter?
What was that? 4?
4? Okay. So that's funny that you mentioned that. Smaller litters, numbers are going to be thrown off.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a singleton. If you're having small litters, if you know you're having a small litter confirmed by X-ray, it's good to this is for everybody out there. It's good to keep an eye on your female because she will not show signs of active going into labor, active labor.
Sometimes her body doesn't even know it's pregnant.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, one of my females, she had a singleton, and I was reverse progesterone testing her, and numbers were high, but it was already like on day 60, 61. I said, something's not right here. Ended up taking her to my vet, and he started asking them, going through the rundown of the questions. I was like, yeah, it's day 61, but her numbers are still high. Reverse progesterone on my machine shows, it shows high. She's not showing any signs, no nesting, no nothing. And he did an x-ray and the pup was breached. Yeah, so we ended up having to do a C-section to pull it out. Luckily we did, otherwise it would have died. It's singletons and small litters numbers. Those reverse progesterone numbers, in my opinion, they don't matter because it's going to be off.
Yeah.
It's going to be off.
It's just a combination of, like, I wouldn't put any one data point. I don't think I would call absolute.
Right.
No, I wouldn't call the temperature.
It should be like a culmination of different factors.
And kind of experience, you know what I mean? Right. You just throw your experience at it. You know, in your female and how she behaves goes a long way too. Like, you could just tell there's a behavioral shift, and you know, like, something's about to happen. Obviously,
go
ahead.
I know that I do X-rays I drive to Toledo to Dr. A at Westside Animal Vet Clinic, and I always have him. Whenever I go for my X-rays, I always have them check the size of the head and the size of the cervix, just in the case that she goes into active labor in the middle of the night and starts pushing. At least I know that, okay, I have this amount of time to get to him, to get him on the phone, say, female's going to labor, she popped out one, we're good to, like, I'm coming right now, meet me at the vet. And he'll meet me there all the time. But, they say that the cervix has to be so much bigger than the actual head of the pup for it to pass through.
Even
naturally.
Yeah, naturally. So it's good for you guys out there to, if your vet doesn't do it already, make sure they do it just so you have that cushion to get to the vet once she starts passing.
Yeah.
Don't allow it all to pass because you might have one that's not going to come out head first.
Right.
There's always that possibility.
Sometimes you have that pup that's just bigger than the others.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, this guy, I'm not really sure. He asked, he said, "What's up, fellas? I have a stud that I have health tested and at an age to start breeding. Any suggestions of good questions to ask and things to really look at before breeding?" I don't know if he's talking about asking the bitch owner, but it's his first time female studding his male out, and he's just looking for some tips. So the one thing I suggest is before you start studding out is to have your male collected and do a semen count. Like, get a good number, know what kind of numbers he's putting out. Because when they're young, the first couple of collections are trash. And so he's asking the bitch owner. Okay. But yeah, make sure your male's been collected a couple of times, get a count on his semen, make sure that he's making good numbers before you start putting him out. Because what you don't want to do is introduce him to the market and start off with 3 or 4 misses. You know what I mean? Because you don't know what his semen counts like.
My number one thing is make sure your stud is able to perform.
Yeah.
When the time comes. I start all my studs young.
There you go.
I start all of them young. They all have it in them. You just got to unlock it.
Yeah.
And I think for me personally, it's the younger the better.
Yeah.
I said it on another podcast that I was on. And excuse the way I say it, but it's the only way I know how to say it. It's play with them young. There ain't no harm in playing with them young. Get them
Make
used
them
to it.
fall in love with the glove.
Exactly. Any of my studs, once they see the glove come out in the bag,
Yeah.
they
It's
they
on.
they are
Yeah.
happy.
I was gonna say I don't use no glove. Back. No, but,
Yeah. The
but
collection
no.
bag.
If you start your stud early, you may have to use a female in heat in the beginning. But after you do a few breedings, you'll notice, like, you'll walk into the room and hold the collection bag in the air, and he will lose his shit. He
Yeah.
knows what's about to go down.
You
It's
better
like
get
it's
that bag on quick before
Yeah.
it starts releasing.
yeah.
He knows what's about. He's like, I'm ready. Let's go.
Yeah. Yep.
T Ray had asked if we can touch on knowing when to do natural birth and to do C sections. He does both. So for us, we started off with females that were capable of doing natural birth, but as these males got bigger, we increased the risk of a puppy getting stuck.
And
Yeah.
females got
So-
smaller.
And females got smaller. So we eliminate as much risk as possible, and everybody gets a C-section.
You don't ever want to risk, especially when you spent good money on a stud. You don't ever want to risk losing anything.
Right.
And I've had a couple clients that says, "Oh no, we do natural," and I'm like, "Please don't."
Yeah.
And I try to warn them because, especially owners that have classics, they have classics, or the dogs are a little more terrier. They're looking to add more mass and bone. They may have bred for years with this older style dog, and then they bring a dog with especially like super broad shoulders and a big head, and they breed to that. And if a puppy catches that, it ain't coming out.
Yeah.
It ain't coming out. And I've had one client, she had a puppy get stuck, and it was stuck in there. And luckily, her vet was available to her. She could run quickly. She went to the vet, got the puppy out, and saved its life. But I'd never if you're looking at dogs of the size of the dogs of today, he's not going to pass them. They're going to get stuck.
Yeah.
And it's just the unfortunate. Let's do and see. So
better safe than sorry. I'd rather spend for us, it's about depending on what time of night it is.
Yeah.
Day. It's anywhere from $1,100 to $2,800. Right. I'd rather spend that than lose mama and the pups.
Yeah.
Or lose a pup. I mean, end of the day, it's the safest for the mama and the pups. Yeah. It's a quick process.
It's the cost of doing business. That's what it is. Yeah. And I think you have to predict those. You say, okay, a litter is going to cost me X, because I know I'm going to do a C-section. I know I'm going to do progesterones. How much the investment of your female. You can throw in these numbers together pretty quickly and say, a litter is going to cost me X. It's going to cost me this much approximately. And we've never ever even considered doing natural. And I've always tried to convince. Now I don't know. There's probably other segments of the American Bully breed. Maybe XLs are doing natural still. I don't know. It's possible. So I'll talk to an XL breeder and see.
Yeah.
There was an XL that Samantha was whelping, and the owners and the vet swore up and down that it was going to be fine to be natural. It's a natural. The vet said it's going to be natural. X-ray says it'll be fine to be a natural. Well, the first puppy got stuck.
Right.
And we spent 12 hours at that vet office.
Ugh. Someone asked here, if you breed mass to a classic dog, will you throw more mass in your puppies? And that is exactly what you hope for. But it doesn't always happen. No.
You go into that breeding with your fingers crossed.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Right. You hope to get. I've seen classic females throw a bull, right? And then I've seen they are an improvement of mom, but they're not like substantial. They're not even remotely as big as the male, right?
Now, if you're doing it for your program, you could breed into it and continue it. Take that, like you said, take that pup that got everything that you wanted and continue on with it
Right.
for the mass. I mean, you can do that, but off the bat, you won't get it.
This one said we have an XL, and she needed a C-section. The male was wide. So yeah, I don't know. Whooping for an
Yep.
XL breeder now had them natural.
Yeah.
Okay, so I
mean,
guess it's kind of either or.
It
Depends.
may vary.
Yeah, it may
It
vary.
varies. It's
Dog.
a variance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we Samantha whelps for Connie Corsos.
Yeah.
They are always, most of the time, natural. But even the breeder himself had said that he has a female that he doesn't trust the natural with. And this is a breed that's been around forever.
Right. For sure.
The expectation is for them to have natural birth, but you don't want to chance your investment, and it's just
Exactly.
you don't want to chance your investment.
Yeah, for us, the female is the most important thing. You know what I mean? Like, she has to be safe, and at no point, if there's a threat to the female's life, there's never a choice. It's the female that's getting saved.
Right.
MK Fam, he said he would ask a question, or he specified yes, asking the bitch owner. Okay, if you start the beginning of this video, you're gonna have all those questions to ask that bitch owner, because we covered the majority of those in this video. Let me see here. Hey, Samantha's in here, dropping gems.
What's she saying?
She's saying how bad you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
It's actually facts. Facts. My disclaimer from earlier, I am not a fucking breeder. All right. She's the breeder. I'm the butler.
Let me see. What trait that's hard to breed away from to you? What's a trait that's hard to breed away from?
I mean, it really depends on the genetics of the parents, right?
Yeah.
If one is very, I mean, you could fix a fault or a flaw with one breeding, depending on parents.
Yeah. But the problem is, I think a lot of people that have like classic dogs, they're generations of classic dog there. You know what I mean? So and one breeding, embedded. One breeding to a massive stud is not going to fix that. Mm-hmm. Like it'll help. Sure.
You may get an anomaly. You may get a unicorn. I mean, it happens. Yeah. It happens.
Right? But for you as a stud owner, you want to try to promote that stud afterwards. Absolutely. You're looking at the pedigree, and you're like, okay, he's half not bull, and he's half a bull. You know what I mean? Like, he himself as a stud is going to throw 50-50 results.
Right.
It's those studs that are deeply inbred on one side to probably an inbred female on the other side. Their genotypes or their phenotypes are very similar. That's where the studs off of that breeding is going to give you a lot more consistency.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot of people do. They start out with a classic, they breed to a big bull, they get females off of that, they breed that to a big bull. Okay, now you're down to like 25% in that range of that older style blood. You're starting to at the end of the day, it's probably cheaper to just buy another female that's bully, but it can be done. It can be done, sure.
Do you believe in the saying, if you breed a bull to a bull, you're going to get bulls?
No.
I don't expect anything with anything.
If you breed a highly inbred bull to a highly inbred bull, you're probably going to get bulls. Probably. I'm telling you what, if there's a giraffe in there somewhere, it's coming back. It just is what it is. Right. It is what it is.
People put so much hopes and dreams in certain breedings, and the one thing you should always consider is if you're playing with living things that have their own genetic makeup.
Yep.
And you're playing a game of chance, and anything could happen, any possibility. It could be the greatest outcome, and it could be the worst outcome. You know, and there's nothing you can do to control that. You can only try to mitigate risk, calculated effort. You can't predict anything.
Man, it's scary.
How much of the pedigree do you guys take into consideration when doing breedings versus the look?
I think a lot like the standard, it has to look like a bully first, and then we worry about the rest. But so yeah, it's got to look like an American bully. But I'm definitely looking at the pedigree, and for me, I'd probably say four generations, if not more. I'm going to look back because I want to see what's in there, because it can come back. It's coming back. It definitely can. Is that the baby?
Yeah.
We need a special appearance.
There she is.
Hopefully Dina's watching. She gets to see her.
She is.
Yeah.
So how's
All
being
right, so
dad? No, I love it.
Carl, you have to, for the people that keep texting me, asking me how to pronounce her name, and I'm like, how do I pronounce her name through a text message? Can you tell the world her name?
Her name is Kailea Ismay.
There you
That's how
go.
you say it.
There you go,
Kailea.
world.
There you go.
So, all right. She just got done throwing a fit. So
Yeah, she's good now.
yeah.
Nice.
Well, I do a lot of ped researching. I like to match the bulls with the bulls.
Yeah.
It gives me a better view into seeing what I may possibly get.
Yeah.
You know.
And a good example, I would say, is our breeding with Pilo and Nomi Martin.
Yeah.
I think, we look, their dogs, two dogs are very similar in phenotype. And those results were very predictable. Like you look at Post Malone, he's he was a great
be a problem.
result.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be taller though, because he's tall. He's a big boy already.
A true standard.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a standard, because I'm thinking he's already over. I think he's already over 16 inches right now.
Yeah.
Damn.
But Nomi is 16 inches. She's a 16-inch female.
Yeah.
So, she's a big girl. So he may have taken after mom on that part. But that's a perfect example. If you look at my profile, you see a dog, Post Malone. So that is off Karl's male, Pilo, and my female.
Dual grand champion.
Dual grand champion. Yeah, I think I only put grand champion in the thing. I need to fix that. And then my female, which is Zero's littermate sister, bred to Magic Mike. So if you look at those two, side by side, dog wise, like they're very similar builds, and the results were very similar. They're very consistent output. We got exactly what, looked at the male, looked at the female, said, okay, the similarities are there, and the results were exactly what we expected.
Yep.
I mean, we could have an entire show about breeding.
We could definitely do that.
We could, because we dive deep into the rabbit hole.
Yeah. Yeah. And then truly, I guess we probably should say that this is skimming the surface, because at every point we talked about something, there's variables to all that. All that. Progesterone numbers and all that. Everything, there's variables. Things may not fall into place, and you just have to make a move anyway.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm gonna leave the viewers with this, and anybody that is going to watch this in the near future or in the far future, it doesn't matter. Stud owners, do your due diligence. Make sure that your stud is ready.
Yeah.
Because the female owners, your clients, are going to depend on you, and if you care to build a reputable name in this community, practice what you need to practice with your stud.
Exactly.
And then female owners, you have to do your due diligence too. Everything we said, it stands true. In I'm going to say 99% of the contracts, you have to alert the stud owners within a certain amount of days that your female has just gone into heat. Understand that us as stud owners are going to do whatever we can to make sure you get your package.
Right.
But if you don't help us help you, then we can't do that.
Yeah.
We can't do that, and it's not always our fault. And
Right.
that's just that.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely pull your males early. Make sure that their numbers are up, because you're doing your clients an injustice if you don't even know what his numbers are, and you're just sending them a tube of shit. You don't even know what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now,
Communication is key.
depending on the female, I have a lot more clients nowadays that are testing the semen when it arrives, and they're reporting. They won't necessarily report back to me, but what they'll say is like, the breeding's done, the semen was good, blah, blah, blah. So I can say, okay, what numbers did you get?
Yeah.
So I'll know if I sent to them the entire collection and they either report the numbers back and they're consistent with what I've been seeing previously, then I know that, his numbers are good. So it's not something if you have an active stud, you're probably not going to have to test his semen frequently because your clients are doing it for you. But at the very least, that baseline number, make sure he is collecting enough to get the job done before you start putting him out there and selling stud fees.
What extender are you guys using?
That depends on where it's going. So if it's here stateside, you still using Dr. Kinney's. Works like a champ. Never had a problem with it. If I'm doing an international, which we've done some international fresh semen, if you're doing international fresh semen, I'm going to use that mini tube LT. What is it? The
Can I chill
LT long term. I've used that, and we've got good numbers with it too. And then if you're sending it to a vet for any kind of analyzation or being frozen or anything like that, they're going to prefer that mini chill LT just because it's clear. And when they spin it down, it's easy to separate the two, right? Because the pellet is obviously visible. When you do that Kinney's, it's just all one big milky mess. So,
yeah.
But we've done with international, we've done well with LT. We've not had a problem. I've actually recently had one where we shipped it out freight on, I think it was a Friday. Yeah, I think we shipped it out freight on a Friday. When they got there at their country, the vet or the FedEx had already closed.
Yeah.
And no, it hadn't already closed, but it was in customs. And they didn't cut it out of customs until after FedEx was closed. So it sat there in FedEx all weekend. And he picked it up Monday, and it was still on the Monday.
Still good.
Yeah. Different box, obviously. International shipping, you don't use that regular box you would use anywhere, but you use a different box. But everything was still good. So, yeah, I'm super happy with Dr. Kinney's. It's cheap. Actually, hold on a second.
I use Dr. Kinney's. I've had real good results with Dr. Kinney's. I mean, one of those packages that got stuck at the Memphis hub during one of the storms, it actually sat at the Memphis hub for 4 days until finally moving on to Kansas City.
Yeah.
So it was in transit for a total of 6 days, and the semen was still good.
Nice.
Yeah.
So this is Exodus. There's the item number.
Yep.
130 PL, Dr. Kinney's. They are dated, and so you see that you just get 120 mils of water, and then you get this little packet, and you just mix the packet in there, stir it up, make sure it's leave it set for about 20 minutes after you stir it up, and then it's ready to go. Now, what we do is we break those down into, I should have grabbed one of those little 5-6 mil tubes, and then we fill all those tubes up with 6 mils of extender and put it in the freezer.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Originally, Dr. Kinney's did not recommend that, and they didn't support it. But then later on, I found some other articles where they put out, they just seen so many people were doing it.
Yeah.
That they were saying, okay, well, if it's froze immediately after it's mixed, then it's good for X amount of time. I can't remember what that number was, but I think it was like 5 months or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's how we do it. And we've not had any issues whatsoever. Really good to use, especially on the weekends. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I tell you what, and it's starting to get to the point. If the client is willing to pay for freight, if it's a Friday and they're willing to pay for freight, I'll do the drive. Because you just get so paranoid about Friday for Saturday sometimes, especially around holidays, Christmas. It's the weather, all that stuff can be tough.
Yeah, the variables with shipping is crazy.
Just some pretty important breedings because of FedEx. So.
Yeah, you guys have not had the best of luck with FedEx.
No.
Jokes. All right, let me see if we got any more questions we didn't address, but I think we are at our almost 1 hour over mark.
So.
Pretty sure it's
that's why I said if I did a thing on Wongfo,
it'd be forever.
Go on for hours, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're just gonna. I mean, I put the time limit on it, but obviously we're just gonna have to let it fly when we need to. Yeah. All right, I think that's about it. We covered a bunch of stuff. We found out progesterone tests are ridiculous. In what state was that? Maine?
Oh, whatever it was, $200.
Yeah, that's insane. That's insane.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate you guys coming on.
Right.
If you would, if you're watching right now, please share the live just to help people find out about us for sure. Help us support the show. We are on Apple Podcasts. We are on, we're going to bring this up. Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, and we're on Google Podcasts, and there was somewhere else. Can't remember. I just recently
iTunes.
But yeah. So find us there, give us a subscription. It's just audio only. But we are always live on Facebook. We're doing my personal right now, but we're also going to do we're also doing it on our Facebook page, which is the Go Rogue Podcast on Facebook, and we're the Go Rogue Podcast on YouTube. That's where we do our lives. And I was thinking about doing maybe a giveaway next week. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, we'll give away some good shit.
I'll take one.
But that'd be nice.
I appreciate you guys coming on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, guys.
For tuning. Thanks, Karl.
We will see you guys next week.
All right.
There.
Bye.